Right, this is the recording.
Yes. Right, when you're ready.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee held on Tuesday, the 17th of May. Go straight to the meat of it. I'm assuming we haven't had any apologies for absence, given we're all here.
We haven't.
Lovely stuff. Any declarations of interest from anyone? No.
I don't have one myself, and hope you don't mind me raising it. Concerning people over, and this isn't just purely formal. I did notice that at planning referral, you can declare an interest in being a member of Hartland Town Council, which is something certainly Plans North we did, and there were lots of us in that position, and I did miss the chair, and they never had service officer weren't particularly interested in declarations of interest.
Yeah.
Perhaps the other way round. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm not trying to. You should today be declaring a declaration of interest in being a member of St Albans District Council.
Okay.
It's particularly relevant because the things we're discussing tonight will eventually go to St Albans on a heard by committee on which you will or may well be sitting. So, Chair, forgive me. I think it's something we ought to get right for the record.
Yeah, no, I think as it's up to members to decide what interest they'd like to declare, but I think Councillor Lightwood would have noted that, and if you would like to make a declaration, I'd be very.
Yes, I would obviously like to make a declaration of interest as a district council. Okay.
Could I suggest perhaps that ought to read? If we get it right once, then it's right every time in the future. Okay, so please forgive me. Words in your mouth, you can correct afterwards. For the purposes of the applications being considered at this meeting and any other business of this meeting, I declare a non-pecuniary interest in being a member of St Albans City and District Council, and in particular in sitting currently on its planning referrals committee. Furthermore, I confirm that I shall refrain from predetermining any application until it is decided by the appropriate committee of St Albans City District Council.
Thank you,
That's
Councillor.
all about that. You might be able to approve it. Or
No, I'm sure I can.
Are you happy with that wording?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I need to declare that while I have, as part of my employment, I have been involved in the submission of responses on items 7 and 8. I do not consider that these meet the threshold for a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest, and I will be considering those items through fresh eyes this evening.
Yeah.
On to item 3, the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 26th of April. Are we happy to take those through record? All in favour? Perfect.
Okay.
Good. Thank
Oh, it's red.
you. It being red matters.
Not sure what it should be.
It is.
It is nice.
Being a long meeting.
Yeah, I was going to
there are
say,
lots of
it's
pages.
necessary to wish everything.
Because it means that pages can be substituted.
I very briefly forgot my own initials at one time. Have we sorry.
That's okay.
Have we received any public questions in accordance with standing?
No, none of those things.
Letters of objection. I'm aware of emails about, is it number 10 Park Avenue, whichever of the Park Avenue.
Yeah, Park Avenue South.
So we received those after the agenda was actually issued, which I believe all committee members have received via email. I do have copies of those that I can make reference to as we come to that application.
Perfect. So as we just know, we've received those and we'll consider them at the appropriate time. So on to applications registered in the weeks ending the 22nd of April, 29th of April, and 6th of May. Five 2022-0974 at 11 Hall Road.
Okay, right. So 11 Cornwall Road. I do have, as mentioned, I think in my email to you previously, we will make reference to the paper copies now as opposed to relying solely on the PowerPoint presentation. The wording, so the proposal looks to extend rearwards at ground floor level by 4.8 metres to expand the ground floor accommodation, stepped in at one side and at first floor level above the existing garage with a subservient roof to the main roof line to create an additional bedroom, 3 bedrooms in total. Neighbouring properties extend further back than the proposed extension building lines. The existing garage is to be converted into a playroom, leaving only 1 off-street parking space. 2 allocated and 0.5 unallocated spaces is a requirement for a 3-bedroom dwelling. Road is in the controlled parking zone. 2 trees are to be removed before replacements are proposed in the rear garden. And I have said consider expressed concern over there being insufficient parking provision for the number of bedrooms proposed, which is 40 and 72 of the district plan flats. So you can see here on the screen the host property. And I did actually add some additional elements for this particular application until my instruction had changed from town clerk to not include quite so much content. So you can see here, so the proposed on the left and the existing on the right, where we've got this 4.8 metre ground floor level extension projecting rearwards. And then here we've got the first floor and the roof floor, or the roof plan that shows extension at the first floor level just above the existing garage, but stepped in to each side with the neighbouring property and with the roof lights to the rear there. It shows the street scene to the existing and the proposed. That's it. But ultimately, my concerns really related to the parking position for this particular application.
Thank you, Heather. Any comments from councillors on this one?
I was just going to say, I just agree with the officer. I mean, I guess that space probably isn't, the gallery space is probably never used for a car, so practical.
But if we have to.
Yeah, no, so I agree with the officer on this.
Councillor Butterworth?
Sorry, just for clarification, an additional bedroom that would take it up to 3 bedrooms.
It would, yes.
Agree.
Any other comments from councillors?
Sure.
Okay, in that case, we might go the recommendation, all in favour?
Okay, that's agreed.
Lovely. 5/2022-1014 does not meet the criteria required for consideration by the committee. So on to 5/2022-0866 at 31 Park. Congratulations.
Yeah. Right, so the proposal looks to demolish the relatively modest 2-bedroom bungalow and replace with a more substantial 3-bed dormer bungalow on a larger footprint. The style appears to be in keeping with the road, which is made up of different styles of property. The road slopes quite steeply, therefore the ridge height of the neighbouring property is varying. Despite the footprint extending further back than the existing, the 45-degree angle does not appear to be obstructed. Garage is lost with only 1 off-street parking space detailed on the drawings. 2 allocated and half an unallocated space is the requirement for 3-bedroom dwelling, no tree works. I've said consider expressed concern over there being insufficient parking provision for the number of bedrooms proposed, policies 40 and 72 of the district plan affairs. So you can see here the existing dwelling, moving on to drawings here that show the street view of the existing and the proposed. And then again from above, you can see here where it does actually project further back than the existing footprint.
And you go back one slide.
Any comments from councillors on this one?
I
Councillor Lockwood?
I agree, and with the comment of those use cases, and they were decided to give this one, probably with these cases, it would have been open to the applicant to convert part of the garden to parking space. And it's chose not to do that.
Thank you, councillor Prosper. Any other comments from councillors? Okay, all in favour of the recommendation?
Okay, that's agreed, thank you.
Okay, 5/2022/0992 does not meet the criteria required for consideration, so on to 5/2022/090 to 74 West Common.
Okay, the proposal looks to add a two-storey front extension to the previously approved scheme to create an office. This addition is relatively small and incorporates well into the approved scheme. The property is already substantial on a spacious plot. Design and materials are in keeping with price, so consider no objection. So you can see here the red cross depicts the property, as you can see, is on a rather substantial plot already and is of a good sized dwelling anyway. And then you can just about see here where the bulk of this actually has already been given planning permission, and this particular application just incorporates a very small additional element to the first floor level to create an office.
Thank you. Heather, any comments on this one?
I just want to understand, is this a two-storey extension or is this just a first floor extension on existing ground floor?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So it's actually there's a ground floor element, and they're adding a first floor to it.
So I'm not sure it's entirely correct to describe then.
I think what Heather's means is that it's, they've already got permission for the ground floor element.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I can show you there, so in the purple colour,
Yeah.
that is the additional elements, and ground floor is already got an approved office and garage as part of the already approved scheme.
Right. Thank
So
you.
they're just adding an additional element of first floor level.
A conservation area,
Additions.
I think it must be, yes. So I actually probably need to add into my recommendation here, subject to appropriate design use materials and conservation area.
I think so, as we can't see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a private road, so I can't actually take the Google Maps down there.
Any other comments from councillors on this one? I can't see any. With the amendment about the language of the conservation area, we have to go with recommendation. All in favour? Okay, on to 5/2022/0985, 3 Eveley Close. Congratulations.
Right, the proposal looks to add a small single-storey extension to the frontage to expand the kitchen space, which is in line with the existing forward projection of the entrance hall and toilet. In addition, a two-storey rear extension across the full width of the house is added, partially over the existing conservatory, which will be demolished as part of the scheme. This extension projects 2.2 metres rearwards, which will create larger living accommodation at ground floor and the enlarging of bedroom size at first floor. No additional bedrooms are added. The property is on the end of the road with a double garage and 2 off-street parking spaces positioned at the rear, so at the end of the back garden. The remaining property extends further back than the application property, therefore reducing any possible impact on the rear extension. And I've said consider no objection. So you can see here, this is the host property, and then we've got this space to the rear, the property with the conservatory, and then the 2 off-street parking spaces and the double garage just there. And then here we've got sort of green arrow marker shows the site of the application, which gives good space for the property in comparison to number 4.
Thank you, Heather. Any comments from councillors on this one? Councillor Wilson.
Are there any plans?
There are plans, yes.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
So what I've just done there is highlighted on there where the
Okay, fine. Yeah.
additional elements are, and then the finished just there.
Okay, I get the idea, brilliant, thank you very much. Okay. Good, fine. I'm not familiar with the road, and the street view is not with many more houses. It's relatively modern. It has, unless other houses have similar treatment already in the road, they tend to be typically of a uniform sort of design. And that once you start altering the frontages, you lose that uniformity, which can be lost from the street scene. Having said that, I'm not particularly concerned by the rear of the house, the street scene in the front, that concerns me.
Would you like me
If
to
you look
go
already,
to the
if
street?
you look already, there's already, I wouldn't say the fronts have anything in common whatsoever, looking at the way they've been developed.
Is it possible to have a quick look?
Of course, yes, yeah.
Please.
Just bear with me a moment.
There's someone fighting in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Oh, do you want
I've
to
just
call
seen-
blind?
I was slightly pointing out earlier.
Yes, they're playing. I think they're doing some training on children's game or something.
Boxercise type thing.
Yes.
Is that for GDPR reasons?
It was distracting. We wanted more focused on us and the YouTube video.
Okay, so this is the post property just here on the corner. And then work it, oh God, I'm sorry, apologies, I haven't clicked the relevant button, bear with me a moment. That's it.
So,
Yeah,
Wow, for a second.
apologies, there's a number of clicks you have to go through to do share screen. Okay, so this is the post property here. With the proposed sort of extension in the front, and then just working our way through the streets. Here's the property's got a different style,
Yes.
and another
Yes.
one with another different sort of style.
And that, the one I'm looking at there with the car standing, that looks like it's been altered already. Maybe not. No.
And I think over the road, actually, we've got a very, very similar style. I think this one here as to what they're proposing to do.
I mean, it's quite clear from just those two as well, that there isn't a uniformity particularly in the streets. You've got
No,
that range of.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
different styles.
Any other comments from councillors on that? Can't see any in mind to go the recommendation, all in favour?
Okay, that's agreed.
Okay, 5 on to 5/22/0.
Also, Councillor Hill, could you just pass me those drawers?
Yes.
Just don't put them away. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. If I don't put them away now, thank you. Get mixing things.
Okay, on to 5/2022/0907, number 5, the Towns.
That's
I
it.
hope I'm not
No,
mispronouncing.
by the trams.
Your observations on this one.
Okay, right, 5 the trams. Application is to introduce a small ground floor front extension to expand the ground floor living space, relatively modest side and rear ground floor extensions to make the footprint of the property more uniform. Does not extend further back than existing furthermost elements of the house and first floor extensions over the footprint of the double garage. Further is to add a further bedroom, ensuite and dressing room. The houses in the road are staggered. First floor extensions are stepped in and do not impact on the 45-degree angle for number 3 of the Chowns, not conservation area and no tree roads proposed. Ample off-street parking and the double garage is being retained. Right, okay, so there's the host property just in front of us there. And then this shows the extensions and the site location taking into account the extensions that they're proposing to do at the side and making big.
You have any comments from councillors on this one?
No 45-degree angle issue with number 3.
No,
No, okay.
no, but I think the fact that I've made a suggestion here means that they've drawn it in. Yes, so you can see here, that, from the
They've
first
stepped
floor, yeah, they've stepped it in over on this side so that they actually take into account the 45-degree angle.
Okay.
It's likely that,
Yeah,
likely that a window is here
yeah.
and taking the 45-degree angle, which is the
It's okay. Surprised it's not been knocked down and rebuilt, so.
Let's not give people ideas. Any other comments from council on this one? No, we have the recommendation for the vote.
Thank you, that's a good.
Okay, 5/2022/0948 does not meet the criteria required for consideration. 5/2022/0872 is us, so we won't be commenting on,
No, we're not.
on this one. 5/2022/1028 at 18A Stewart Road. Observations from this?
The proposal looks to create a porch to the frontage with a wooden canopy, a single story extension to the side to the boundary of number 20 Stewart Road to create a pantry and a utility, utility room, and a two-story rear extension extends 2.5 metres rearwards and 5.3 metres across the width of the property to create additional living space at ground floor level and to extend the bedroom size at first floor level. No additional bedrooms are added to the existing 3. The design of this property takes the form of a long single-storey projection towards the front boundary, with the main property many metres back on the plot. Due to the layout of the property on the plot and the relationship with the neighbouring properties, there appears to be no adverse effect on their amenity. The design materials are in keeping with the original property. There is a carriage-style drive to the property with parking provision for at least 3 cars. No tree works and not conservation area. Consider no objection. If I just move through these images here, this sort of shows that the host property is actually set quite a long way back on the plot with this single story forward projection of living space foundation. So I don't know if these images will kind of help and show you. It's probably a little bit blurred. You might want to actually see the paper drawings with this.
It's a very long way back.
It is an extremely long way back. I think if I'm able to sort of show you on here, so we've got the property that you can see visible here. That property sort of takes what I class as a normal building line to the close to the frontage of the, or close to the road in the street. But then when you look at the property to the neighbouring property that potentially could be impacted, which is this one here, which is in line with the main host property, the building works are actually proposed on the opposite side, so they're going to be really affecting the garden of this property.
Without tourism, to get free investment by being in the shop.
Who has, sorry?
Tourism's van.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know actually if I can sort of show you just here in my purple where the extensions are actually due to take place. But as mentioned, they're actually over to the side of the property, which has got the garden. It's an extraordinary shaped house. It's, I mean, obviously being 18A, it's an infill as well.
There are 2 or 3 properties on this road that are just set miles back and way back.
And I think we've had an application for, when I saw this one, I thought, oh, we've seen this before.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a different property. It's like a couple of doors along,
Yeah,
I think, actually, yeah.
Not just another property.
I recognise the similar, yeah, I suppose the same thing. Any other comments from councillors on? I can't see any. I don't think there's much wrong with it. All in favour of the recommendation?
That's agreed, thank you.
You. Okay, on to 5/2022/1069 at number 6 Pigeonwick. Your observations on this?
Okay, the proposal is to demolish the existing 3-bedroom bungalow style property with undercroft garage element built in the standard brick with white cladding section to the frontage and replace with a 2-storey 3-bedroom dwelling, partially white rendered and partially timber clad with grey aluminium openings. It's proposed to site the new dwelling on the same footprint as existing, with the addition of a small flat roof single-storey front extension the proposed ridge height is to increase by 800 millimetres to 6.8 metres. There are a number of new windows added across the property. However, there does not appear to be any overlooking due to the side windows being obscure glaze and rear windows overlooking to the side of garden to number 28 Sun Lane. The existing slope driveway and garage are to be removed and infilled to create a level access with parking for 3 cars off street. The road is made up of a selection of style properties, including 2-storey dwellings just outside the conservation area, no tree works. I'll say consider no objection, subject to no loss of amenity to neighbouring properties, policy 72 of the district plan reflects. You can see here the sort of very different style property with the under parking. And this here is an artist's impression as to what a replacement dwelling will actually be. And then again here, an indicative street scene with the red line, just about, if you can see that there, showing the existing roof height and then the marginal increase roof height. Yeah, and then there's the site location plan here, which shows the site in question. I think probably what might be quite useful is if I do show to you the different styles of dwellings in this particular street.
The paper cut.
Of course. Sorry. Go to. That's okay. So this is the particular property in question. So you can see that a couple to the side are pretty much very, very similar. Actually, there's just one that's very, very similar. But the first one in the street has also been changed to a similar style of design to what is proposed. And on the opposite side of the road, you can see that it's made up of what I class as standard 2-storey dwellings.
What would you say?
Sorry?
Standard.
Standard, yeah. So in more standard sort of style, 2-storey dwellings with flat access, very clear upstairs, first floor accommodation, whereas these look to me to be one of the few bungalows in the street, but still as originally built.
Seems to be that the design, the artist's impression, is not actually, it's still fairly in keeping with the sort of style of the houses on that side of the road and the house that's already been extended.
Of course, yes.
The thing I've noticed was the only time I've ever seen where it's actually getting smaller on the footprint is the kitchen, the back doesn't have been replaced.
No, so they're not apart from a very small single-story extension to the frontage, they're not actually included in footprint at all. I think where they're trying to gain the accommodation is by having a first floor, which they don't really have at the moment.
And they're not getting closer at either side, are they? Because they're obviously fairly packed in, but this doesn't seem to be a street of great architectural interest. So I don't feel the need to preserve.
It must have been very different ones because it's where Alan Terry lives. She lived in London.
It's a street of mixed styles.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's the pigeon went to Alan Terry lived on.
Lorna Wang lived there as well.
Well, she did as well.
It's good. Who's
So
that?
that's making me feel old.
Who is that? Who? I don't know who this
Jane
is.
Alan Terry, when she was a famous actress, I probably know.
Okay.
Is that not Ellen Terry in that?
But is Alan Terry there playing Lady Macbeth?
Right, it's the rather dark picture I've always thought
We should got the level, we're going, that's all.
that. Okay, well, yeah, I'm happy with this.
Probably built in the 60s, cheap build.
Yes.
The driveway is looking down, and so it was particularly dangerous for anyone who might happen to be on the street.
Obviously, ease of delivering meat is not a planning consideration, but I agree, it was a particularly.
Yeah.
I looked at the planning to say, so the parking.
But it's good that it's obviously not great for parking, but they've got 3 spaces.
Well, they've got 3 spaces.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm not a great fan of what's becoming the modern style of the very extensive timber framing and the white rendered. Basically, there isn't timber framed. There are quite a few of them around now, and they all stick out like a sore thumb. Right, there's one at the end of the road here, so it wouldn't be the only one. But when you've got a road that's not entirely uniform, there is a style. I think it's a pity to have that white render and extensive timber. It's a personal taste, but I'm not a great fan of it.
I share your views on the architectural merits of the style, but I'm not entirely sure that it makes the street scene has an overly significant effect on the street scene, certainly in my opinion.
They said that some of the properties there are particularly inspiring in architectural value.
Is it conservation area?
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
If it was conservation area, I think it would be a decidedly different conversation.
okay.
Well, I question the long durability of the wooden coloring, but that's down to the owner, not me.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask, obviously I'm a new boy and here to learn and fit in, that's fine, but the suggestion, no objection, subject to no loss of amenity. Shouldn't we be expressing a view whether there's loss of amenity or not? Because saying it that way looks as if we can't decide what our view is.
So we generally use that as a sort of a way of indicating that if there was a loss of amenity, we can't see one necessarily, but if there was a loss of amenity, the district should consider that. I think I'm right in saying that.
Yes, I mean, we don't have the luxury of being able to visit the site. We take our views from essentially the documentation and the drawings that we have in front of us. We don't visit the site and have the opportunity to stand and look through maybe windows. We'll see later on with an application here where we've had objections presented to us as residents living next door to it that come up very different from the drawings that we have presented to us. So yeah, so it's kind of really there's a bit of a cover-all to say that we're aware that there could be.
Yeah. 2 points. I mean, one is the normal planning officers don't necessarily visit either. So, yeah. But the other point is on the website. Are there any objections from neighbours?
Not when I last checked. No, that's not to say that objections haven't been received and they've not been loaded. For instance, the Park Avenue application that we've got objections sent to us, they're not on the website yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from councillors on this one? Can't see any. Are we minded to go to the recommendation? All in favour?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, that's the case.
Okay.
Region.
On to 5/2022 1075. Doesn't meet the criteria, sorry. Neither does 5/2022 094. I just keep getting stuck together. Yeah. 5/2022 1041 at 85 Springfield Crescent.
Okay, planning permission has already been granted earlier this year for an almost matching scheme. This proposal differs only in that a skylight window has been added to the ground floor rear element in the dining room. All other elements remain the same. No objection.
Do we want to look at this one in great detail, or we have to go through recommendation?
I don't know why it wasn't done as a planning variation of the original scheme, but yeah.
All in favour of going the original? Thank you.
Okay, that's agreed.
On to 5/2022 1087 at 22 Eastmore Park.
Okay, another one that's had planning permission already granted earlier this year for a very similar scheme. This proposal differs from the already approved scheme by extending the first floor front extension over the garage by approximately further 800 millimetres from the approved scheme. This extension now marginally extends beyond the two-storey elements of the neighbouring property. However, it does not extend beyond the footprint of the garage, nor does it appear to cause a detrimental effect on number 20 Eastmore Park. Consider no objection subject to the no loss of amenity to number 20 Eastmore Park, 1972 of the district plan refers. So you can see here that the proposed property with a rather elongated flat roof element garage at the front, which got planning permission already to build over. And this just shows, as you can see here, where the extension is coming out a little further than what was actually originally approved, and goes marginally beyond the building line of the neighbouring property at number 20.
Thanks for it.
I don't know, the street scene, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
This is quite a tricky one to see actually, because they've got a lot of vegetation at the front, which has meant I have to actually do an image from the side. This might be quite a useful drawing actually for you to see.
But I ask where the opposite statement no more marginally extends beyond two-storey. Neighbouring property. How much beyond?
I don't know because I'm not able to scale the drawings on the photos yet. So it kind of visually you can see that it extends a little further, but it's can't scale the drawings unfortunately, so I can't get anything larger than A3.
Let's see.
It's only going forward like 800 millimetres, so it can't be that much.
It is very marginal.
Yeah. Marginal.
Very marginal.
Any comments from councillors on this one? Any mind to go the recommendation, all in favour?
That's great.
Okay. 2022 1088, 1093 and 1096 do not meet the criteria required for consideration. On to 2022 1039 at 1A Barrows Way. Your observations?
Okay, planning permission for a similar scheme was approved in 2017, which would have now expired. The property is currently a dormer window style dwelling, which is positioned along a private access drive off Barrows Way. Property backs onto the railway line and is located a long way from other properties in the area. This new proposal appears to be a more modest scheme with the removal of a two-storey element, the flat roof dormer window, and reduction in the depth of the single-storey rear extension from the approved scheme. The garage is also retained and the site is in the conservation area of no tree works. Now, say consider no objection, subject to appropriate design use and materials in the Hartland Conservation Area, and provided that there will be no loss of the amenity of neighbouring properties, policy 725 and 85 of the district plan refers. So yeah, as you can see here, there's this clearly an infill at some point. It's located all the way back here with the train lines, the ones just at the back there. This is the site location plan, which really the closest properties to it are the garages for the properties in Sun Lane. I think that's it. It might be useful for you to look at the drawings because I've got copies of the planning that was given permission back in 2017, and then the comparison drawings to what they're proposing to do now, which actually is a much more modest scheme and what they have planning permission to build the full.
It's right down the back, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's right out the way.
Long way from the properties in Sun Lane, back onto the gardens along, so it's long way.
They're also uphill from that.
Yeah.
So there's very little risk conveniency loss, I would have thought, no. And I can't see that the neighbour here's garden, I'm passing the drones.
Anyone else interested to say anything? Nothing.
Probably the visitors is not on the hill.
Yes.
Didn't go up the access road.
I did, yes.
Oh, you didn't?
Funnily enough, I've lived 3 hours from there, 7 years. It was only a couple of weeks ago, and I realised that.
Really?
Yes, yes.
Well, you know what I mean?
You couldn't tell from the road, could you? I mean, you could see there's that access, little access road.
Yeah.
So you couldn't tell any what was up there.
Because I mean, I thought the access road only served the garages.
Yes, right.
Properties in some lane. I didn't realise that there was actually a house at the back of it.
So did I. I always assumed it was just access to the garages.
Never cease learning, do you?
Except for understanding some Google Maps visual that help. What it was. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's fun. But yes, any other comments from councillors on this one? No, all mind to go to the recommendation, all in favour? Okay, 5/2022/1052 does not meet the criteria. So on to 5/2022/0886. At 12 Burton Court, 48 Luton Road.
Okay, the property is part of a complex of masonette type properties, and this application is for changes to a first floor dwelling. It's proposed to introduce a large flat roof dormer I've used the word introduce again, to include accommodation in the roof space to create 2 additional bedrooms with en suites, totaling 4 in the property. Large amounts of glass at roof level is also proposed. The proposed dormer window appears to be rather dominant on the property, and the volume of glazing is not in keeping with the style of the property, which is located in Hartman's conservation area. Parking provision in this complex appears to be at a premium, with no details provided of provision that is available to satisfy the number required for an increase in bedrooms. Consider recommend refusal. The proposed extension of side roof lights are deemed to be overly dominant and out of keeping with the host dwelling and surrounding properties located in Hartman's conservation area. The zone is also expressed that there is insufficient parking provision for the number of bedrooms proposed in the property. Policies 40, 69, 72 and 85 of the district plan there. Okay, so this kind of helps you to get a bit of an idea as to the access in, so it's directly off the Luton Road. And the host dwelling is up here, sort of hidden away, but is overlooks a number of properties in sort of close proximity, actually. So it sort of overlooks the properties over here, and then there's another one which I think is Byron Road. So it could be Hillside Road or this, yeah.
It's Byron.
Byron, yeah. Okay. That's the centre property. So this is a masonette, you have to sort of kind of bear in mind in the sense that they're wanting to make changes to the vertical level. I probably would encourage you to have a little look at the drawings. I've tried to use the highlighter purple pen to highlight where the changes are proposed to this particular property.
Is there already accommodation in the roof?
No.
So they're building in the roof.
Yeah. So ultimately, they're a first floor masonette with all their accommodation on one level, and they're wanting to add an extra level, which will be building in the roof with a extra dormer window and extra glazing. And it's not
Well, yes, they're not particularly exactly a planning thing, but I'm assuming then that because they're masonettes and those buildings, that they are the freeholders.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Well, I think they've got a problem. They've got to address how they're going to get permission to build. I would have thought.
Well, so speak. My masonette, the people upstairs own the roof, own the lot.
Really?
Yeah. So it probably they just need the freeholder to sign off on it and say, yeah, we're happy. And that won't be in most cases. That probably won't be a large issue with masonettes.
They demand some money. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a legal
Yeah.
route to go through before you get there.
Because it's not a planning issue, but because they're assuming there are some legal stuff that need.
you don't actually have to own the property
No,
to
no,
apply for
no,
planning,
no, no, no. But you have to have the freeholder's permission if you want
to build, but not to apply for planning.
No, if you do to build, it's actually.
They would sell the application, so it's
Yes.
another part of their interest.
Look here, actually. You can see that
Windows.
there's these here are extra windows, and these are the dormer windows at the back here.
Given how
this.
Where that is, that's a lot of windows like in an area.
This just helps.
Because
The windows that are there, are these windows here, which are into the front of the chamber, and then there's a large window at the back.
Yeah, I just want to see a picture of the building.
I'm happy with
It'll
it.
get something additional. Well,
So just here, you can see these are the windows here, which are in that sort of kind of triangular shape. And then we've got the large windows at the back here, which are in the dormer, which is just here.
I wondered whether it would be worth, because yes, I don't think all those windows are in keeping with the conservation area, but I was wondering whether perhaps with the recommendation, adding in some wording along the lines of urban dominant and active keeping with the host dwelling in surrounding properties located in the conservation area.
The purple basically shows where they're extended
use for them
extended, but
inappropriate
the
use.
issue really relates to these windows here.
And also,
One here.
because we've raised that,
And then a large window across the back.
that isn't, that's the extraordinary.
I'm so sorry. Because I'm just saying, I suggest we might want to add some wording in about including the use of, so reasons for refusal, say including use of materials that are not in keeping with the conservation area.
Yeah.
I would say about the light pollution.
Or redeeming feature is you can't actually see it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is sort of, totally comes next.
Yes, they just.
Yes, not on the conservation area.
Yeah, and on the parking, there is, from what I can recall, almost none, isn't there?
Well, I think there looks to be, like I'm just showing on here, that there might be, you've got one space in this sort of forecourt area
Yes.
and one garage.
I'm not even convinced there's enough parking in that forecourt for one per flat.
No, probably not, because I think that there are actually 14 flats.
Yeah.
On the complex.
Yes. I'm not convinced there are enough garages. I can get them, but certainly it looks fairly tight amount of space.
Well, he has an air card here.
Yes.
Would say
Gives a view.
probably have.
Yes.
I'm not also convinced that the garage is big enough to park.
That as well, yes.
Having been there.
There's a lot of buildings built as garages, fine when they were built, but they're not big enough for modern cars.
Any other comments from councillors on this one? Councillor Bosworth.
Given that we're moving towards refusal on this particular one, obviously you're referencing 4 Norman's policies. Should we, for completeness, be referencing any other neighbourhood plan policies?
Yes, I can probably use ESD2, but that's around about the only one, unfortunately, that I would be able to use because it's not a new build. If it was a new build, then I'd have more available to me.
Okay. Right, not even SD1. New build. The reason I'm saying this is not just sort of to add more words, but in my experience, limited, the officers in Albans don't very often refer to this plan in their recommendations. And it seems if we're doing similar.
Yes, I agree.
Particularly where it's one we're recommending refusal, it matters less if we're recommending acceptance. For example, SD1 is all developments, that's not just extension. It's not just new builds.
Yes, I mean, I think the fact that it's in the conservation area will give further weight to me being able to use that particular policy.
Yeah. We're 72 is extensions and that's the same thing, yes.
Yeah, 72 is, I think, residential extensions.
and 85.
is conservation area.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so with the additions that Rosemary and I made,
Yeah.
you remind me what those were?
Which was to include the use of materials being not in keeping with conservation area and potential light pollution.
Thank you. With those, additions,
Sorry, Chair. Also, the door windows are in keeping with the materials.
yes, so that I think was the proposed extensions inside roof lights, so the keeping, oh yeah, let's add in some language there about, and not in keeping with the conservation area.
The doors are
So do you actually include with where it says the side roof lights, we can also include the dormer as well?
And the other windows.
Yeah.
That's a good catch, Roger. Any other comments from councillors? No, have to go to the recommendation based amendments.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, on to 5/2022/0951 at 34 Meadow.
Okay, the proposal is to extend a two-storey level in a wraparound style along the side of the property and partially atop the front elevation. The ground floor extensions look to increase the ground floor accommodation with the utility, study and hallway, and at first floor level extension to an existing bedroom and the creation of another, totaling 4 in the property. A 1 metre gap is being retained between the boundary of number 36 Meadow Walk. The forward projection of the new two-storey front extension does not extend as far as the building line of the neighbouring property, and there appears to be sufficient off-street parking provision. Consider no objection subject to no loss of immunity to neighbouring properties and sufficient parking provision being provided. Policies 40 and 72 of the district plan refers. Okay, so you can see here sort of the sort of more modest standard style property, which actually you can see the neighbouring, the other side of the semi has been extended quite substantially. And then
Quite
this is
strangely, it's like that.
this
It's the laws.
different, yeah, it's with a low overhang.
Is it conservation area?
No. And then this here shows the roof line of the proposed with this sort of kind of wraparound style along the side.
Thank you, Heather. Big cultural councillors.
We've got a picture of the front. What does it look like from the front?
Not on there, no, but I've got you here, right? For those who have basically proposed. So you might find it useful actually to use things for so the difference. Doesn't help that there's an awful lot of lines and a technical drawing on it.
I was happy.
One metre gap was normally like. Yeah.
It's the minimum required.
Is it? Yeah.
But you can get away with 800. I have seen that, but 1 metre is sort of the preferred. It's the norm, yes.
To go along with the recommendation. I think it's a bit of a shame it would have been quite a nice, attractive period symmetrical pair. And they're going to look a little odd, I think, but
Given what's been done.
but yeah, and it looks to be to the right, looks reasonably attractive, but go along with it.
So that was the original,
They're very varied.
If anything, looking slightly odd makes it in keeping with the,
I think even number 30, I think it's 32 or even could be 36 is different again.
Yes. They are very
This one
varied.
here.
Yeah.
You filled in that. So it's about top of it.
It's very nondescript, let's leave it at that.
Maybe it's a garage.
It's there is.
Is it a garage?
Yeah.
I think it's a carport that they built on top of. Quite how it's standing up.
Well, there is a wall to pierce it under it. Which one seems engineered.
What's interesting is that we're more concerned about the neighbourhood than we are about the application.
It's usually a good sign for the application.
Okay, so happy with the wording?
Yes, I think it's fine. Councillor, oh, sorry, we're going
Yeah.
to a vote. Councillor,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, it's caught out like we're voting unexpectedly. 2022 1078 21A Station Road.
The proposal looks to create a small infill extension of the open canopy front porch and create a 4-bedroom at first floor level above the footprint of the existing forward projecting garage. The building line of the neighbouring property on the side of the proposed extension is marginally in front of the garage building line, the flat roof single garage between the two properties, therefore reducing any possible impact from the first floor extension. There is ample parking provision on the frontage to satisfy the parking standards for a 4-bedroom property in the conservation area. No objection subject to no loss of means to number 19 Station Road. The process of designing use of materials in the conservation area, policy 72 and 85 of the district planning facts. Okay, so you can see here essentially the roof. Yeah, the roof wall was proposed.
Sorry, just a position. Is that Counter Road?
Yes,
I think it must be, yes.
can't work out where else.
A lot of roads on it, it's all look the same. On and on, you can very much.
It's not Overstone.
Really, they don't say.
I don't know.
It's in Hartland and Weston. It's not Overstone. It's in the Kipling Way, or it's
It's, I don't think it's opposite Devonshire, so I think it is Campbell's. It's the first one.
any comments on this one from council other than its location? And have to go to the recommendation. All in favour?
Okay, that's great.
Right, 2022 1042 at Holly Lodge, 10 Park Avenue South, which is, if I recall, where we've had letters of objection.
We have indeed. So ultimately, if I sort of kind of start out with the fact that my recommendation was on the basis of before I received the objections. I had spoken to one of the objectors beforehand, who said that he was going to share with me his concerns, but until I had sight of those concerns, I wasn't able to factor those in. But you've, as I mentioned earlier on, you've all received the two emails of objection that's from the two residents, one who lives directly next door and one who lives opposite, outlining their sort of concerns, really just kind of to summarise their main issues that they had. I mean, the neighbour who lives at number 8 Park Avenue South doesn't have issue in relation to something going on the site. He understands that that's highly likely to happen, but just feels that what they are proposing is just actually going to be a little bit overly large and a little bit dominant. He's made reference to previous refusals for the site where actually he currently lives, which related to being too close to the boundary and the loss of amenity on the neighbouring properties. So one of the objectors says that it's too substantial for the size of the plot, and given how the proposed dwellings fills the plot width-wise, we think it's too large and will have too detrimental an impact on the street scene. Proposed dwelling in the building line that is in front of the building lines for both the existing house at 10 Park Avenue South and at 8 Park Avenue South. So that's one of the objectors, and the other one was that, as I just mentioned, they were concerned about the proximity of the dwellings to the boundary, and their concerns were also that the property includes a basement with a substantial 2-storey element of the structure, together with a very large roof space, which has only got 1.6 metres from the common boundary, creates an overbearing effect on number 8 Park Avenue South, little scope for substantial screen planting to mitigate the impact. The bulk of such a large structure so close to the boundary will cause an unacceptable degree of overshadowing and loss of amenity to number 8. The current proposal is overdeveloped and therefore out of keeping with this section of Park Avenue South, which would also therefore adversely affect as part of the conservation area, which I think is characterised by its open frontage fit.
So, sorry, can I?
Yes.
So if you go back.
Yeah.
So number 10, did they own the land where the cross is and they want to put an additional house there?
They do.
Not there's out, but
Mm.
okay. fine.
Yes.
So they want to put quite a large additional house between.
They do.
Those two
So,
houses.
I mean, so the application property is actually the site where we've got the swimming pool and the sort of connecting path. And annoyingly, Google has said number 10 is actually number 8. So number 8 is the
Okay, fine.
new, yeah, which is a little bit sort of.
Number 10 used to also have the land for number 8.
I think so, yes, it did, yeah.
So the house on the left with the swimming pool, they're applying to put one where the cross is.
Yes.
And where it says number 10 on the right there, they're the one that are objecting.
They are, yes. Yeah.
Understood.
So the new property at number 8, which is said number 10 on here, was actually the subject of a number of applications that were refused and even went to the inspectorate and was dismissed. So obviously they kind of scaled it back, got an approved application which has since been built. So this just here actually shows where we've got the existing property, which is this one here, with its nice big detached garage. And then this is the new property proposed, which actually, footprint wise, is larger than the property that's already on the site and extends quite a lot further back than this property that we can see here.
You have the elevation.
I've got all the drawings here.
Not
Yeah.
on that.
I think all I've got here is actually the street view.
Well, I think, if you look at the street, I think having looked at the plans here, I think I'm right in saying the proposal is actually higher than the two houses either side of it.
It is, yeah, you can see even from the street view.
So looking at the plans and it's large and it did look like it would adversely affect the street scene in terms of compromising the openness of the streets.
It's turning Park Avenue into Rosebery Avenue.
This is quite a useful drawing, actually, so you can see here the scale of it in comparison to the existing properties. So this is number 8, which is already the infill application, and then this is the original property and extends much further back. It's much more of a sort of square feel on the plot.
But particularly given that this bit of Park Avenue is much more characterised by separated houses. There are bits of Park Avenue where, you know, houses are a bit closer together, but
Not in that.
not in this bit.
It has an open aspect, and my view is it is over dominant.
I mean, I can show you actually just on street scene, which obviously shows shows it, and it is, as you say, very much characterised by.
I think when I looked at the street scene, number 8 wasn't on the.
No.
No.
It was
So-
built by the time the bands went. So that makes.
Yeah, so interestingly, I think this sign is for the house that is now number 8. But you can see, as the chairman has just mentioned, that it is characterised by this quite heavily heavily sort of kind of tree lined, open frontage sort of
And
feel.
that one's being developed at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Oh, this one here,
That one we've just been looking, another one you were out before a moment ago.
this one.
No. Yeah, I think it's that, yeah,
I think it's.
that's one.
I think that's the applicant. I think it's just round the
It's
corner.
being developed, there's a board up round about it at the moment.
So this is the applicant's property.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so this is the one with the swimming pool in the back garden. And then, yeah, you continue on and you've got this, well, you can see a big open grass expanse of the garden, which then continues on even further. And in this location here, I think just beyond what would be behind this hedging is number 8.
Well, in this, it's not been built yet, but now it's not.
Now it's there.
I don't suppose we know, do we? So this appeals have gone before on this site, have they? Do we know whether the planning inspector was happy in general to have a dwelling? And it was the fact that it was over large, or were they
Yes,
not
so
happy with the dwelling?
It was the inspector was reviewing what the site of what is now number 8. There's never actually been any proposal put in for
For
this
this spot,
particular
okay.
spot. It was for number 8. So yes, I think the inspector just felt that it was what was proposed at the time was too large because we've progressed it into having something. So I think it's built with permission from district as opposed to actually going to appeal and then being approved.
I think, I mean, not seeking to influence the committee, but I think from my personal perspective, I think it's far too big. And I think it's, I mean,
Would you like me to share the drawings?
as Park Avenue goes, it's close to sort of, not terracing,
But I mean, that'll be.
closing up the openness of the street scenes.
And this
Yeah.
pretty much sort of kind of, this is quite a good one because it shows the openness of the plot to what we're then going to have.
I guess the question is, if they just, if you know, if they inflated it all by 20%, say, for example, 25%, you still, you've got probably the main loss of the character of the area. Okay, so it's a slightly smaller house.
Yeah.
But you've still got the driveway, you've got cars parked there, you've got lots of it.
At most, in this one.
That's it.
They are keeping the trees.
I think if it was smaller, it would be less of a problem about the opening. But I think we can only go with what's in front of us, and that isn't an open.
Yeah.
Heating, or at least not of the kinds that you would expect from.
Yeah, so I'm saying,
Well, this big part.
say reject them, really, I suppose, right?
I would like to refuse.
Yeah.
Let me just have a little look, see if I can just go.
I know you can't. Crystal ball games and say about future, but
I think that actually the number of properties that have that sort of surface plot space to the side are getting less and less.
Yeah.
Because this is the site here that we're looking at potentially now, and then if I sort of move along, you can see that there is.
It's all built up down that left hand side.
The further round you go, the more and more built up it actually becomes.
So that there is one plot opposite this house.
Yeah.
Where the house does not occupy a large portion of the plot.
So this one here, Councillor Butterworth, just there.
Yeah.
Where the arrow is.
Yeah,
And opposite that again. On the other side, it's.
Here.
No,
Or there.
that one.
Yeah.
I think I don't think of each application has own merits, but it is interesting that number 8 had to scale back. The planning inspector did not.
Yeah.
Did not allow the.
And number 8 is still a big property.
Yes.
on a historical note, when Henry Steers was developing the avenues in the Edwardian times, typically plots were sold off, double plots.
Yeah.
And one house to be built and the side garden left. And over the recent decades, of course, there's been more and more infilling those side gardens. So, and that's possibly what happened here, maybe it was a trivial plot. So it would be difficult to object in principle. That seems that I'm expected in any way. But the question of the size of the property is really
Well, judging by the fact that 3 has got a 3A and a 3B, which is the one that you can see at the bottom of the screen. I'd assume that that's what's happened there. At some point they've inbuilt them and they've inbuilt again. But it does feel like it's out of character to have another large property between, that close between. I think it's the point.
Yes, I think the point is it's a scale.
Yeah.
What's proposed. As I say, particularly bearing in mind, the inspector has already refused an appeal and had to scale back on another. Of course, each application stands on its own merits, but that is.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, a point to take on board.
Yeah, I was just say, I mean, you can see from the way it's sort of going to divide up the gardens, how the original host dwelling has a much larger plot than the new proposed dwelling, and it's going to be a larger house. So I think it would have to see that's going to be there. So I think really anything which is larger than to have the sort of similar according to the size of the gardens and the width of the site, it would really need to be at most the same size as the host dwelling, or slightly smaller.
Yeah.
Would be, but yeah, so I think we the principle of it something being developed there isn't say, you know, isn't necessarily future, but yeah, it's just the scale.
It's the scale of what's proposed.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's the significant, that's not a word, the significant way in which it would affect the openness, and it would have, you know, I think quite a serious detriment with that.
Okay, shall we sort of gather some words, just some
Yeah.
general words together, and then I'll put that into a sensible format?
Lovely stuff. So I think it works. I think overdevelopment, it's the bulk and the scale and the massing as well. Effect on the street scene,
Out of keeping with the hub and the conservation area.
out of keeping with the hub and the conservation area. Any more?
Over dominant.
What do you mean by us keeping conversation? Doesn't fit in because of the scale of the design.
Conservation areas, open trees, you know, nice street scene.
Yeah, so openness more than design. Yeah.
We need to use the word probably loss of amenity from neighbouring properties.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be clear about that. What is the last amenity? But that not blocking it in their minds. But
Yes.
not arguing the other people. I agree with that entirely. But
Yeah, so I think essentially with an empty space there that they're currently enjoying at the moment, to then move to have a rather dominant property, which, you know, one of the objection letters is sort of outlined how close it is. It's says that it's potentially 1.6 metres from a common boundary. But actually, getting carried away with all of this, I did actually include in my PowerPoint presentation the gentleman's slides that he did forward across to us. So bear with me a second. To those, so these perspective drawings that were provided by the objector. So this is his house here, and then this is the proposed new property just there. Again, his property to the left, proposed new property to the right, and then again.
Yeah.
So I think you can see sort of kind of from here that the applicant has made some gesture to try and remove loss of humidity by nipping in at this level just here. Try and sort of remove the 45-degree angle or impact on some lights to them, but it's just questionable as to whether or not that is actually enough.
They're going to be new windows on that bit where it's infill. It's not infill. You know what I mean?
Is it going to become upstairs?
I think anything, to be honest, would be overlooking.
Yeah, I agree.
okay, then but certainly amenity.
No, it's, we've got a lantern roof to the ground floor. There's no windows in the side, just a window from one of the bedrooms looking out into the garden.
Is that not a window?
That's the window, yeah, but it's looking out that way as opposed to.
Standing a very long way down.
Yeah,
It looks a bit over
Yeah.
dominant from
Yes.
Yeah.
affecting the neighbours and the.
So can I just confirm, these are drawings by the person who lives next door who's objecting to it?
Yes, so he has commissioned somebody to do these artist perspective drawings. I couldn't answer that, but it's no different than us receiving line drawings that we've received from
No, I suppose my point is that the design drawings of the property that's going to be done there has to be accurate.
Yes,
The architect, this isn't an architect drawing, this is, it is an artist's drawing. Or
They-
somebody who objects to the development, how accurate is, and I'm not saying that it's
Yeah.
made up, but it does make me wonder as to the accuracy.
they have been drawn by an architect,
Oh, they've been drawn by an
Yes.
architect, not an
but
artist.
he has been, yes, but they are, he's described them as being perspective drawings.
Okay.
But they have been designed, or they have actually been drawn by an actual architect. Whether or not they have been embellished, I don't know.
Agreeing with councillor Oliver that we ought to look at these somewhat cautiously. And if we move on to the next one, please, I'll make my other point. But the architect's hopefully shown at the bottom where, you know, one's standing to get that view. And the fact that it's so close to the boundary does have the effect, I think, from the perspective of enlarging the proposed new house. So it gives the impression, perhaps, that it's not larger than it really is. And so it's not, I agree with Councillor, it's not something we should take as being absolutely necessarily a through representation.
I think we can take it from the, planning application.
Certainly
It's a very dominant.
We certainly can.
Bearing in mind that these are architect's drawings, and it, even if they're questionable, he's even indicated from the point on the site, he's taking that perspective. So my reaction is that it's reasonable degree of credence.
Reasonable degree, what's that?
The credence, you know, he's gone to some length to make sure it's accurate.
It's not as though the district authority ever checks the applicant's architectural drawings either.
Clearly not.
So, yeah. Okay, but I guess just emphasises what we've all said anyway.
Yeah.
But considering this is, you know, one of the right is the infill one.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't feel right.
I'm a little bit concerned because there is a window underneath that door on that flat bit. But it's facing out to the garden. It's a bit of overlooking, but I think it's probably, if we just say the potential possibility, it covers up all types of amenity, doesn't it?
Is there anything else for us to add? Notes. Overdevelopment, loss of so out of keeping with conservation area, street scene, bulk, scale, massing, overdominant, loss of amenity, or possible loss of amenity.
Any more for any more? In that case, with a recommendation of refusal, we have to go with that. All in favour?
That's a great extent.
Your comments were referred to.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And I'll make reference actually to, and because of this being a new build, a number of the neighbourhood plan policies. I've made reference here to policy H1, but that was on the basis of it being an objection, whereas now we're moving to a recommend refusal, but I'll be able to use much more strength.
Okay, on to
I'll just make an observation. This is an example of the value of this process and also the value of any objector writing in, because it's prompted us to reconsider something.
Absolutely, yes.
Process.
I'm sorry, there's a plan here.
Oh,
Two plans.
Yes.
I've been hiding them on mine as well, apparently.
Don't worry. It's okay when I've got two applications. It's when I have 22 applications. It's more tricky to fill away.
Okay, 5/2022/1085, a busy evening for Meadow Walk. Number 6.
6, Meadow Walk. Proposes to add a 2-storey rear extension projecting 3.5 metres rearwards in line with the rear building line of number 8 Meadow Walk and 6 metres across the back in line with the existing first floor element. Build over the existing ground floor playroom element at first floor level to add an additional bedroom, which will total 4, and add a small wooden porch canopy. The extensions appear to be in keeping or subservient to the rest of the property, do not cause loss of amenity to neighbouring properties. 2 off-street parking spaces are detailed, which is sufficient by 1.5 spaces in parking standards. Express concern that insufficient parking provision is being provided on the site. The number of bedrooms proposed. Policies 40 and 72 additional refers.
Is that photograph
Yeah.
a funny angle, or is that
It's-
right hand house at that angle?
The right-hand house is at that angle. Yeah, as you can see here.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
It's sort of, I think Meadow Walk comes off of Crabtree Lane, and I think it's just the way that it kind of comes off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my wording, I don't really have any major issues with the extensions, but the fact that they're only providing 2 parking spaces does concern me.
Sorry, given the angle of number 4, is it not potentially affected by the 45-degree angle? Even though the extension on the open property is on the other side of the property.
It's 2-story, isn't it? So, yeah. The papers.
Yes, so I think, well, you can see the existing and the proposed. It's a nice easy drawing to see, because you could just put 2, and you can do a what the difference comparison.
Yeah, so they've touched the second floor extension right in. It just, I thought, I wouldn't like to get a protractor out and have a go at it, because I think it'll be tight, so I think they've just about done it so that it doesn't hit 45 degrees.
You can see that's the reason why it's been cut.
Yeah, when I looked at it on my PC, I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
From that point of view, just.
But I suppose just because it makes the 45 doesn't mean to say it's a bit, not a bit over dominant.
I think it's the most that you could do without it being obviously a problem. Whether or not it is still a problem is for this committee to determine. Make a recommendation.
We express concern.
I-
Did we express, like, the subject to, I don't know, not a detrimental effects on number 4 or something?
Well, we would express concern that efficient parking provisions provided, and the concern was also expressed about the potential for possible amenities number.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning the number, so maybe the council or the district officer will look at it.
I mean, you would hope that, given the angles, they would look at it anyway.
Maybe the way they've drawn it, the 2 cars parked look pretty tight to exit.
Yeah.
I think essentially that they aren't gaining any additional parking to what they've already got. I mean, it doesn't help that my number 6 Meadow Walk wording is right in the way. Let me
You follow
just-
the design ideas on the right hand side.
Let me, go to, yeah.
Yeah, if that's what they're there already. Looks tight anyway.
They're adding a bedroom on.
They are,
So
which is why I
If
expressed the concern over the parking.
it being what it is already isn't necessarily a less thing.
I'm just saying it looks quite tight in the first place.
Right, so here we go, so that's the house. Parking, just here.
Oh, yes.
And you get to park on that path, you can park. Not on the pavement, on the path on the shrine. To be clear for anyone.
Yes.
You could probably make it be a bit tighter.
Because it is a funny angles, because of that, I mean, it's not, it is an odd turning, it's slope.
Sweeps, it
Yes,
sweeps
it
round.
sweeps
and
round the
around.
line.
I think
Just got Crabtree Lane, it's literally after the bridge on the
Just
right.
after the bridge, it's a very, very tight turn.
I assume at some point it must have been an infill.
I don't think so, no, because of it starts at 2, 4, 6.
And the window style is the same.
It might not have that right hand
Yeah,
extension,
Yes.
I guess, so maybe
No.
that would be good.
yeah. Isn't that the issue of the drop curb on the left screen that should be extended, otherwise the two cars won't fit on the drive.
So they drive in at a slight angle.
Yes, well, that's good. Yes, you put it more cogently than I did, that's the line meant, actually, it's very odd.
Sorry.
And, yes, they must have staggered, it is an odd entrance, but you're getting a second. It's a.
You make
It's
it like
all,
that.
the drop curb is at an awkward angle to the actual drive. I guess, but I guess it's one something you get used to, don't you, if you live there and you've got
Unfortunately,
the
it's
close.
quite small, yeah.
There are 2 cars, helpfully, there are 2
Actually,
cars
on
on
there.
the drive.
Yes.
That's how you get 2 cars on the
Yes.
drive,
On a slight angle.
on their path,
Yeah.
which is.
Express concern, subject to no.
Sorry, I can't unfortunately, by going in any tighter, I end up going to the street.
That was as close as the satellites got to
Yeah.
Meadow Walk.
If I go in any closer, it takes me to the street, unfortunately.
It's pretty much that of a meadow.
Probably was though, at one point.
Usually these places are named after a meadow that was destroyed for the building of the road.
It's like, I remember off of Crabtree Lane, further along here, and this looks slightly digress, there's off of Crabtree Lane was the lovely orchard that
Yes,
they built.
they're built on, yes.
That's a proper-
It's known as Top Street, now Top Street.
Sorry?
So Top Street is not the top street anymore, is it? Top Street, like.
I'm led to believe it was originally.
On the corner, that's the old farmhouse there.
No.
Yes.
I think that's the old farmhouse there, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's actually listed, grade 2 listed.
the dimensions? I've been in it. Well, I know we had to order it at one time and when it took them to bring it up to scratch.
Yes.
Anyway, back
Okay,
to
back to Meadow
6
Walk.
Meadow Walk. So with the addition of some language about, we also having concerns about potential loss of immunity, we have to go with the recommendation. All in favour?
It's not really a planning consideration. No. The only way that you could potentially say that it's a planning consideration is if that it was very clear that they were adding additional parking to it with no provisions or dropped curb. But the fact they're making no changes to that, I'm not sure that we can.
Do we have a majority of the vote?
Yes.
Lovely. You know?
Just think about it with things like this, if highways don't object. That's what we can
There's a
do.
lot of going
Not that we're advocating for that.
No, is that it?
5 2022 1089 and 1113. I can't get my pages to turn again. There we go. So on to 5 2022 1132 at 36 Ashley Gardens.
Okay. Proposal looks to demolish the existing detached single garage located towards the rear of the property and build a wraparound style extension with a single story with 800mm gap in the boundary of 34 Ashley Gardens and a 2-story extension to the rear across the width of the property to create expanded living space at the ground floor level and enlargement of 2 bedrooms at the first floor level. No additional bedrooms are proposed. 45-degree visibility zones have been shown in the drawings to not be interrupted. No tree works. So no tree works. Consider no objection subject to no loss of immunity to neighbouring properties. Policy 72 of the district plan affairs. So you can see here that actually the garage is detached, a little single story garage at the rear here that they're looking to demolish. And then this is what they're proposing to put in its stead with a wraparound extension to the side there.
What does that do for the parking?
We've got this equivalent, yeah, street. Look like.
What's the streets in?
I'm not convinced that the parking is going to be sufficient.
So they've got it, they've still got a garage. They're just moving it further forward, with the two parking spaces already. It's got 3.
We've got a picture of like what the new street scene will be like, because even though they're not necessarily particularly beautiful houses, there's quite a lot of conformity of design. And there are not huge gaps between them anyway.
I don't have street scene, I only have a proposed.
Could we have a look at, Google?
Of the other ones in the streets.
Yeah, or even
Yeah.
just that. I don't know. I'd just be interested in what it's actually going to look like. Is it going to make them so close that it's like a terracing?
Maybe the elevation.
Yeah, the elevations. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it does, but it doesn't actually show it as a street scene, unfortunately, it's just the standalone
I
extension.
must say, this is the first time I've ever seen a garage with a roof light. Make me skeptical slightly about how much garaging is going to be used for.
Doesn't really show the neighbour, does it? Because it's just showing the house.
I think what I know of that street, I think there's been a lot of sort of infill already along these lines.
Yes.
Or something pretty similar.
So because I've just got a feeling that I could be wrong. I could be mixing up my streets, but that this one planning inspector or something had said that there wasn't, there hadn't been too much, and that we go up and down.
Yeah, so this is the actual site property here, and then this one here is also the neighbour.
Let's go back. There's none of those have been extended to the side, I don't think.
Some adaptations, one garage conversion.
So again, this is the post property here. I mean, how 100% accurate this is, I'm not quite sure, because this is actually 6 years old almost. Yeah, it's July 2016.
Don't know. But all these are just sort of detached,
Yeah.
uniformed.
The other side of the road?
Very different actually. So the other side is,
This is the back of, so it's not
yeah,
even.
And in fact, towards the start of that road, there's been houses knocked down and rebuilt already.
it's along
Yeah,
here.
at the very beginning of Ashley Parkins, there's been 2 put on aside for one house previously.
Between 2009 and 2016, someone did the road.
Very recently.
I think it's, my view is I think it's fine because it's quite a mixed street.
It is.
Can I see that plan, it's fine.
No.
There is still a gap.
Yes.
The neighbour hasn't.
They had one I last looked, no, I mean, I can double check again now.
Well, I know of 2 houses in that, not so that street, that complex, so we look at other streets there, what effectively you have it built in the garage, the drive area.
Other than my slight scepticism about whether a garage with a roof line is going to be used in the garage, I think actually not a lot wrong with. Assuming that the neighbour is, not objecting.
If the name's not objecting.
All bedrooms, 2 parking spaces.
3, 2 parking spaces in the garage.
This is the question about whether a garage with a roof light is going to be used in the garage or not.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is, no.
Yes.
I don't know why you'd put a roof light in a garage.
No letters of objection on there at all.
Post officer Jonathan Walk.
Your system brings things up a good deal quicker than mine at home, I'll tell you. I've often got to sit and wait.
You have 5.
Sorry?
You have 5.
Oh, yeah, with a vengeance. I've got some clients, I've got to forget my speed is quite phenomenal.
My Wi-Fi might be brought to me by a person with the speed that I've got.
Quite quick.
Okay. All in favour of the recommendation set out?
Yeah, okay,
You abstaining?
okay, that's fine.
We had a majority anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
5/2022/1109, another 39 Margate Avenue.
Yeah, so as detailed above, planning permission has been granted twice in recent times for the demolition and replacement of this property. Both approved schemes are, in one case, substantially larger and the other less so, but still larger and more dominant than this proposal. The general design and style is similar to that of the previous two applications. The site is in the conservation area. No objections, subject to no loss of community to neighbouring properties and the appropriate design and use of materials in the conservation area. Policies H1 and ESD2 of the Heartland Neighbourhood Plan and policy 69, 70 and 85 of the district plan is theirs. So it's again Park Avenue North with a substantial property. And this here shows that the number 41 as it is, number 43, which is the site that is up for discussion now, and then number 45, which has been given planning permission at the end of last year, which obviously hasn't quite been built just yet. I do have a very useful drawing, which has got some outlines of the previous two application permissions against the existing, against this particular proposal, which has shown that it is actually quite a substantially smaller than what there would be permission for.
Yeah, much.
Really pretty illogical.
So I don't, yeah.
Can I just ask, are the other previous two planning applications still live?
They've been granted, so they could build them if they wished.
So they could do, if this was granted, they could.
They could have the pick of all three.
Whichever one they put the shovel in the ground on first. So quite how you work that. Use that to
Certainly,
enforcement.
demonstrate necessarily we understand, but what do you think is going on there? What are they trying to achieve?
Well, I think that they've just, I don't know, whether or not they've come to a point where they've decided that they want to go for something a little bit smaller. I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% sure, actually, if the people who are applying for this planning permission were the same people that got planning permission before.
I was wondering, put the different coloured ones on so you can see.
I never question why people are going for slightly smaller developments than they might otherwise do.
No, it's something comes to understand what they're.
Here we go. So actually, this answers the question. The applicant has recently purchased the property, so I don't think it's the people owning it now were the ones that applied for planning permission for. It says the applicant has recently purchased the property and wishes to replace the existing dwelling with a new dwelling of the scale and type approved under the two recent applications. This proposal submitted under this application represent a reworking of the exactant consents to better suit the applicant's accommodation requirements and architectural interests.
Jason Jones.
So that's a good word, isn't it?
So it's less bulky than the 2019 application.
And the 21 as well, I believe.
Not, yes, it is. Yeah.
It's sort of nipped in and lowered.
Yes.
What's-
But basically, the illogical.
Just a bit there.
Well, can I say, I did that with one of my daughters. The plot I bought had two applications, one which was an appeal. We then took the application and made a slightly redefined for a slightly smaller house and we submitted the application. Because we thought what was felt previously was just something going for size rather than quality. So it does happen. Yeah.
I think.
All in favour of the recommendation?
What do you remember? I mean, sorry if I missed the plot. Does either side it show existing, or because one of them is got planning permissions to show what that would be like?
It shows what it would be like.
Well, it would be
That's
like on the
the-
right, certainly.
Bless you.
So the average property here will be, the roof line will be slightly higher than the ones on the outside.
Yes,
not by much.
but lower than they could otherwise build if they just went on the two that they've already got.
It's true, that is true, and it's that's dominant. Okay, fine. Okay.
All in favour of the recommendation? Right. Okay, so on to item 7, the Southdown Industrial Estate item, planning application 5/2021 2376. And do you want to speak to this?
Yes, I can do. So we've, the town clerk has presented a report which is included with the agenda, which outlines the town council's recommendation that went to district council back in 2021, which sort of outlined a number of concerns and the recommendations, the refusal that they had. This application was called in to be discussed at committee, and since then was presented to go to referrals last week. But due to a number of reasons, it was actually deferred, which then gives the town council an opportunity for the town council to look at the recommendation that was presented to the district council with a view to maybe adding some additional wording to it or a strengthening in certain areas. I know that Councillor Butterworth raised a few sort of areas where it was sort of felt that might be possible. So, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Butterworth, do you want to speak to this one?
Yes, I called it in when I do such things. In fact, the application was registered, I think, in July, August, and it's taken 8 months to come to the planning committee at St Albans. What struck me, and also town clerk, when I discussed it with him, was that the officer's recommendation didn't really do justice to some elements of the Harbour Neighbour plan. And given that this is very important to Hopton, it's already industrial estate unless you consider Harbour Neighbour as like small scale and mill road. It's particularly important to the people who live adjacent to it. Not only is it a reason at all as a referrals committee, which decided to adjourn, and rightly so, thank you to the council live for formally opposing that on the evening. The question is, what do we do in the discussion with the town clerk, given we do have an opportunity to again, we should comment again and draw the referrals committee attention to the fact that there are elements in the neighbourhood plan which have been directed by the Norman's officer. And in doing so, of course, we'll give the Norman's officer to actually read the comments, opportunity to rework the recommendation, which actually would be the ideal thing to do. So that I was at the meeting, I was ready to speak because rightly deferred, so that didn't arise. And we may decide that it's appropriate for someone, I'd be happy to be that person to go to the meeting when it's actually considered. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butterworth. Any councillors want to raise any comments on this item? Councillor.
Yeah. So before I consider what I just want to understand what we want to achieve from this. So we put forward some new comments now. But that then, I mean, this several of the planning officers already sort of given out a report, and with that, I mean, they might know this, would the planning's referral committee then look at what we've done, what we might say tonight, in addition to because I'm just concerned that we make some new points today, which might disagree with the planning officer. It just seems like a slightly inverse situation to what we normally do, is we're a consultee. I appreciate it's a really important strategic view, and I have no problems with us giving our views on in relation to the plan. But would our comments, how would our comments be judged against the planning officer?
So I think that would be up to the members of plans referrals to decide quite how they want to judge it, but giving an extra view can't hurt further councillors at plans referral to have another set of thoughts on it. Councillor Boswell.
I've had once before, as a member of the Plans Audit Committee, drawn the officer's attention in advance of the planning meeting to the fact that they neglected to refer to a particular neighbourhood plan policy, and they said, "Well, thank you very much. We will refer to that in the decisions." I mean, it may or may not want the decision, but it's right that they should be considering not neglecting not the neighbourhood plan. It's in the interest of as a whole and the residents that all relevant plan considerations be considered. Some seem to be omitted from the recommendation central. So I think we owe it to our residents to make those points. In this case, and as an example for the future, we would very much like the neighbourhood plan to be considered.
Thank you, Councillor Boswell. Any other comments from councillors? No.
Add any in that we can. We should add any in that we can.
Councillor Light.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, in terms of the plan, would EST 20? In particular, development should want the conservation that was in there. Action should be taken to mitigate this, such as granting appropriate sourcing, citing efforts and designing to ensure any climate solutions can be solved. On
Page 45. Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Is to 4.
There is actually 3.7 of the report does list some additional neighbourhood plan policies which we can include, which haven't already been referenced in the recommendation that was presented in September last year. But it feel that there are additional ones that are certainly relevant in addition. And good.
And TMO 4 on page 63, which is reduced road traffic pollution and relocated.
I think that's, yeah.
Now, what we're doing is pointing out things that the officer has not yet considered.
Yeah.
As it happens, the officer has already considered the ST20.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you've got to do a lot of reading to follow that up, but
Yeah.
okay. TMO 4 doesn't seem to have been considered, so.
Yeah, so this is where sometimes actually they find it really useful to look at the preamble text because it's not actually a specific policy, it's the preamble to that particular policy subject.
Yeah.
So what's the other one about the pollution?
Yeah, I think Councillor Boswell said it's already been included.
No, the other, so
Yeah, 0.4.
the one so before that, so apologies, it was is it E20?
Yes,
E20.
that's
That's referred to as 73 of the
Right.
subject. 73.
the other suggestions for beefing up the recommendation.
So we have ER8, which actually was mentioned in our original recommendation.
Yeah.
That's not been included. We also seem to have reference to to SI11, which I think is for social and yes. It is, yes, it comes under the social infrastructure facilities. So it's SI 11, isn't it? Yeah, SI 11. Utilities infrastructure. Read that one.
That's lovely.
When that's ready.
Yes, so then we've got the SS2 hasn't been referenced by the officer. Sorry, yes, Councillor Butterworth.
The other thing which people like to mention is the officer's report to that is that usually an officer's recommendation of subordinates at least summarises what Hartlepool Town Council has said as standing consultation, which then makes sense of paragraph 9. Well, it says the heading comment on town council recommendations. Whereas in this report, the haven't had the courtesy to actually refer to what we've said. But I think we should draw attention to that because they normally do. It's courteous to say the least the statutory consultee, and they actually do this. So. And they should do as a matter of good practice, because if we refer to particular policies, then they will pick them up in their own report.
Is that an oversight on this occasion, or is that a regular occurrence at referral?
This is unusual.
Because I know that it appears on sort of normal plans, normal applications,
Yeah.
that it's very clear that we have got our own sort of individual parish and town council comment. But is this sort of the norm for a referral?
I think this is probably an oversight. I think it's unusual.
Right, okay.
But then they only had 8 months to prepare the report. Sorry.
And they were working from home.
So was I.
Three
probably, but-
days a week, probably.
Let's get.
Anyway,
with
yes,
the
okay, so
debate
draw
that's in front of
attention
us.
to.
There is a giant bug or something
Sorry.
Sorry.
here. Councillor Palmer.
I think it's the wasp, actually.
Lovely.
Just have to keep on.
Oh.
There in that light.
Oh, yeah.
It's because that's over here.
Yes.
Councillor Palmer, sorry.
So I think you take that when we've got 310 referred to as hours of operation and not restrictive enough. Do not cover Good Friday, Christmas Day, and strengthen that, then as far as I can see, and then it goes on to 311 and except for loss of amenities. I think somewhere along the line, perhaps it might be useful to link those and to say, including the unacceptable operational hours.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether we want to go on the variety of hours, want to be stronger on that because it's actually.
Yes, but the hours of operation are quite expensive.
Yes, they are unacceptably extensive.
And of course, the applications for 24/7
Was
working,
24, yes.
at least the officers put in silent top of page 52.
Yes, yeah, that's restricted them quite considerably.
Three.
Yeah, so I've got different editions. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a bit,
It's still
It's-
quite significant, but
and it's
all week.
slightly ambivalent, isn't it? It's operational activities audible.
Yes, if they send their beach rock or something. then-
Yes, exactly, it's a bit, that's, leaves a lot of elbow room to still
Yeah, that's right.
considerable disruption, I mean, basically.
Can I just say, partly because of the fact that officer, having spent some time reading this, last month's meeting, just to consider it. One of the difficulties here is that these facilities are here already with planning permission. the fact that they're not used because they're not fit for purpose, but they could be used
Right, okay.
without any restriction hours.
Is it unrestricted at the moment then?
I think some of the units are, some aren't, but some of them are restricted. So there is a planning difficulty in imposing restrictions which are too restrictive. I'm not saying what they've done is exactly right. I'm just saying there is an issue here.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand that, and I think one of the key points about that is also in terms of looking at noise pollution.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that what's proposed is actually really going to address that particularly. I would say not, I mean, it's pretty vague of one, isn't it?
I think the main issue really surrounding the operational hours related to Unit 1, which is located so close to Meadow Walk. I don't think that the issue is quite so strong.
Yes, I
Unit
think it's clear,
close
which is
towards
why,
Down Road.
which is why I'm saying I think it needs tied in with which is Unit 1, because that's really where the big issues arise.
And of course, there are numerous objections. I counted them.
Yes,
It's something I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's possibly more than 50. That's cool. But yes, no, it's unpopular to put it mildly.
Can I just talk about the restriction of hours? Would you normally do a planning application for a development of an industrial site, as a rule of thumb, put down a restriction on hours that they can operate?
Yes, I think.
I think,
We don't have many, do we?
I think,
I'm just talking generally because,
Yeah, it's-
because,
yeah, no, I think it's because, to me, the thing problem is the change of use from predominantly, what is it, it's now currently, it's going to become warehouse. So you're going to get more,
Yes.
if its operation's fine, if you don't have lots of lorries going up, get a few lights on, that's just, you're expecting an industrial site, it's the lorries, isn't it?
Unit 1 was big space.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I think that's where the issue sort of kind of really has arisen, is the fact that we're going from clearly a very quiet usage unit used within normal, what you would class as sort of kind of normal opening hours.
Social.
Yes.
And the change of use is part of the planning, isn't it? It's like a material consideration.
is it actually a change of use?
Or is it?
Yes, it is. So demolition of existing buildings, the construction of 8 new units, totaling blah, 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 and within class E, B2, and B8. So I don't know actually if there is a change of
I'm not
use,
sure.
but it's just those are class orders that they are applying for off the site.
I think what's happened is the class orders, they changed.
Yeah, I know.
And so this is just. Thousands.
Like a translation, yeah, rather than a.
That.
I think because they're adding additional units, they're having to make it clear what those units class use will be.
That's it.
Are we getting close to a recommendation? Is there anything that hasn't been raised that we would like to raise? That was.
And I'll have to be a little careful because I'm actually registered. Okay.
Yeah, it was, not to hit the boss.
In terms of, I know highways haven't had problem, but in terms of the roads, HGVs driving out onto that road where there are 2 bus stops, it seems to me it's a bottleneck anyway. It's only going to become more of one.
Has it gone into the line?
Yes,
I agree.
And also, I mean, depending on the size of the HGVs, the sheer size, I have trouble actually accessing under vision and get side visions and getting stuck under a bridge.
That's the button.
One of the difficulties I've observed is highways is of course county, and St Albans and it's very reluctant to go against what the Highways Department is advising.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, when with local knowledge, we can see the problem.
But it seems to suggest that highways really have properly come out and looked at it, doesn't it?
But you would hope so, they would for this.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, there's an extensive work on it.
But in reality, access is no more, is actually easier than reversing trucks into Waitrose. Yeah, that's a pretty narrow entrance in there, trucks can get in and out, so we may not like the big heavy trucks, but I have difficulty seeing how it's a real problem.
I mean, there's
Other than volume.
the Hoffenden removal plans, small removal, they're based up there, aren't they? But I don't know whether they have articulated.
But I think
Yeah, but they're true, they're bigger ones, yeah, but they're not that small.
I think the bigger problem is going to be volume, isn't it? On what are two, I mean, you can either get it in from, well, two or three, whichever directions you're coming from, whichever way you're coming at it from, they are relatively small roads. If you have a lot of volume, you're not going to create a bottleneck.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to define what that unit is going to be used for. I think it's going to be a sort of Amazon DHL type, sort of big lorries come, drop all the goods, it's sort of a transient warehouse, and then smaller vans come, take all the stuff away. So the volume is the smaller vans, plus the several times a day, the big lorries. And there will be a volume. It doesn't work unless they've got a volume.
Well, no, but well, quite, but we know what your options
Well, one's builders merchants, which
Yeah.
I guess is Jewson, because
presumably it's Jewson's moving.
yes,
Well,
yeah.
I would guess that.
But I didn't know the other, but
Now,
now
when this comes to an end in 2025, I think.
Jewson's.
probably about right there. Having said all of that, it is designated for employment, even in our neighbourhood plan. People who say, "Oh, I much prefer flats or houses," well, actually, that's not how it's designated, and that's not how we're framing our points. And we do want the employment for ordinary people, not just working from home city types. And we do want some these sort of amenities on our doorstep, because we're losing so many of them already. So there are pluses and minuses, but I think our point is some of the neighbourhood plan points have not been reflected. On behalf of residents, we do want them to look again at the hours of operation and potential loss of amenity, Pigman Meadow Walk, and we would just ask them to look again at the highways issues. I think that's where we come out, is it?
Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, so what I was going to sort of suggest in a sense is to use the recommendation that we presented in September last year as the basis, with the addition of these extra neighbourhood plan policies and wording that we've highlighted as we've sort of discussed. And then that I will present to you for approval, and then forwarding on to district as rapidly as we can.
And we'll highlight as well that this wasn't not having been included in the report.
I think that with respect shouldn't go any forward.
No,
Because I think the report should just be absolutely straight deadline.
Policy recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want me to go along and speak on behalf of the town council? Speak to that script as it were at the meeting, just to add emphasis, because I did notice, Rosemary, you came along to Pounds North last year,
Yes.
and that doesn't happen very often, but I think it created a very positive impression that actually town councillor came, town council came out of point of view, and if it actually resulted in refusal or against his recommendation. I don't promise it'll have the same effect, but it will. But I think it's good that we do hear that. That's enormous.
Yes, no, I'm very happy for you to attend on behalf of this committee, Roger.
Does the town council, this is just a general point, does the town council have the right
Yes.
to go along on top of any application?
Yes.
Yes.
And when you came along, Rosemary, were you there as a town, I couldn't remember you there as you were there as a town council speaking on behalf of towns?
Speaking on behalf of what? recommendations we made, yeah. But you do, town council has the right.
A few years ago, there was a rota for Plans North Committee, and each committee member was voted on to attend Plans North to present. That was a few years ago, but did used to have a rota in place.
I don't think we necessarily erode it, but I think.
No,
we
no,
should-
I agree, but
Potentially.
Big and strategic,
Yes, from time to time, it does, there are occasions when it does make sense for somebody to go and speak. Yes, generally speaking, I mean, when I was actually starting I think usually you sort of go on the principle that it should, ideally it's a ward councillor, but it doesn't always practically work out that way.
Because you don't have to, as I say.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're doing on the town council, you know, think of the town council.
I think actually-
the town as a whole.
No, actually, I think when I went to speak.
No, previously, and you would have been if you were previously.
Well, there's neither here nor there to this, but actually, I think it might have been after I decided to retire.
Last year it was, yes.
Yes, it was, so I wasn't, I was just down.
Yeah, that's very.
Okay, so are you happy with that? That I will
I think we should,
incorporate the.
put it to a vote to be on the safe side, but I think we are all in favour. Lovely. Right.
And obviously bearing in mind that for this application, or this particular agenda item, I'll be declaring councillor Liver's declaration.
Yeah. And mine, but
And yours as well.
that's the next one, which is item 8, Secretary of State Pauline Luton's London Luton Airport expansion to 19 million passengers. Reported at page 75.
Is that deja vu?
We have looked at the consultation for 32 million, but London Luton Airport is bringing in many applications, and this is the second, well, it's the first that went in before the 32 million one, but has then been called in by the Secretary of State
Okay,
about a month ago, I think.
So this different.
It is deja vu, but it's a slightly different number on the front of the word million.
You were considering writing going before, what it was going to.
Oh, I think we would have done it.
We, so actually appendix A, presents what the town council's comments were. It was sent through to Luton Borough Council in June last year, which was in relation to this lower million capacity. We did obviously look at the most recent application, which was for the 32 million. This is an opportunity really for the town council to maybe strengthen or to amend the wording that they put to Luton Borough Council last year in relation to this public inquiry scheme called in by the Secretary of State.
Yeah. So yes, this is for those on the deja vu. I think this is the 4th time since I was elected in 2019. So it's a bit of deja vu. Yeah, so I just reminding myself, I think the reasons that we put in 2021 still stand. The only question I had was whether we want to add, if there's anything that we had last time for the 32 million that we didn't have in this one, whether there's anything we wanted to add. I think we covered most of the key points. I guess about what.
I went to a meeting which was organised by Hong Sky. Very senior people, I think an invitation would come on here, but I was only 2 councillors who retired. Meeting with the manager at Luton Airport, who has responsibility for noise and pollution. And actually that was quite interesting. And it is relevant to this, I'm not just sort of taking that time. In that what we're talking about was not the planning application, but the flight paths.
Yeah.
Because they have been looking at changing flight paths. And in conjunction with other airports. One thing they've already achieved is that Stansted and Luton incoming flights, if they have to stack as a single stack, which meant a delay in landings at one airport, delayed the other airport as well, which of course was rubbish for everyone. They're now separated into 2 stacks, and the stack for Luton Airport is now over Gresham Water Okay. So what, that doesn't affect Hartlepool, but that's one positive thing for the airport. They were looking at westbound takeoffs, currently turn south, so come around the western Hartlepool, which actually creates a lot of noise. They were looking at whether they could instead turn north, go over Dunstable, which would have been helpful for Hartlepool, but they cannot do that because that might involve overflying more urban districts than they do at present. It might actually be beneficial overall, but they can't do that because of the legislation. So those flights would continue to come from west of Hartlepool. Whether they're 18 million, 19 million, 35 million, that's what they will do. The flight path which goes, takes off to the east and then comes tight circle right back around over the middle or north of Hartlepool. They are hoping by 2027 to be able to reroute slightly, which would be a little more favourable for Hartlepool. The other thing I learned was that the quieter aircraft were promised there aren't enough of them, and they turn out not to be so quiet after all. There's an engineering problem which hasn't been solved. And that refers to on page 78, because in the second paragraph, talk about new generation aircraft, new incentives for aircraft aircraft operation. You might like to add that we understand that they aren't necessarily as quiet as they had been promised. And in the first paragraph, well, there's nothing wrong with it, you might have the reference to review of flight paths, not bringing the hope for relief for Harpenden residents in respect of Western takeoffs.
2022, isn't it, that they're doing the airspace review? Which is this year.
What's coming?
Yes.
The other thing, incidentally, by the by, that came out of that conversation, and this was all public knowledge, was that Heathrow had previously been participating in the airspace review on the basis of third runway, and they're now participating on the basis of no third runway, even though there's been no official announcement from it. I thought was rather interesting.
Would have been more helpful for after this, I think, if taken away the ability for Luton to do its 32 million.
Okay. I know this has been webcast, but I've not said anything which I referred to me was probably
Perfect. So with those additions,
Yeah,
any other comments or questions, or are we happy to move to a vote? What are we resolving?
so I suppose.
Resolving to make the representation to the
Yes,
Oh,
yes, so resolve to make additional submission. I suppose a submission, additional submission to the public inquiry, taking on board the suggested amendments to the original recommendation.
all in favour.
And is that town clerk signs off on our
Correct, yes, yes, so this will be essentially a mirror image of what we did in June last year with the amended wording signed by the council.
Lovely stuff. Okay, appeals. We have appeals at, oh, what are appeals this one?
We do.
So we have notification of an appeal at Land off Bulk Close. Hornbeam Wood. And the decision, the 12 convict appeal has been dismissed. And it's also been dismissed at Long Acre Hollywood. It's just for noting. We have preservation, we don't have any preservation. on the work, so
Pages.
we can't note what we don't have, but we know we don't have any. Conservation area, tree works and technical applications for noting. List of weekly support and district council decisions, again, just for noting. The next meeting of this committee will be held on Tuesday, the 7th of June at 7:30 p.m. in the chamber. And the next meeting of District Council Plans North will be held on Monday, the 23rd of May at 7 p.m. presumably in their council chamber.
I thought the plans also be cancelled.
Possibly has since this agenda went out.
It may be on a different date, we don't have that.
Yeah, no, it's a cancelled, like the business.
In that case, it brings meeting to a close at 9:45. Lovely stuff.
Stephen.